He came all over my sheets.
I am kind of mean to you, but in a very funny way.
Don't you have to go get your kids or something?
The Trauma Bond Podcast with Chaz
and Nicole.
Game on.
I gave you your opportunity
Okay.
while this thing was converting, and you chose not to. So
I'll just hold it.
yeah,
It's
you're
not
gonna have
healthy,
to.
but
You're strengthening your bladder walls. Isn't that a thing?
no, it's unhealthy to hold your pee. It can create bladder problems.
I don't agree with
I mean,
that.
I'm a nurse, so I would know.
Strongly disagree. All right, so yeah, this episode was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're doing an intro to this episode? Okay.
Yeah. This will play before the interview that we just did.
So I know you guys are used to us being super funny. This episode is we feel like we're too funny, so we thought we'd bring on a professional to actually talk about how to help actual trauma.
Yeah, in case anyone was like, when are they going to get to the part where they help me with my issues?
And I've had some people say that don't agree with this podcast, oh, you guys laugh about trauma, that might trigger someone, blah, blah, blah. You should actually help. Okay, so here we are. We brought in a licensed
therapist or coach. She's not a therapist. She is a coach.
She was pretty smart. Some of the stuff she said made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, after this little intro, don't expect a lot of laughter, but if you have some issues, it's only
a good one for
and
you.
it's only $47 for an hour.
Yeah, honestly, it's not a bad deal. We will have a promo code.
Yes.
I don't have it currently because of how we have to record these. So, it'll probably be in the description of the podcast, and you just click on that link. You'll get an ebook, one other thing, and then a $47 1 hour session. Mm-hmm. And unlike a therapist, she's not just going to say, well, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
She'll actually help you.
She'll give you solutions.
She'll give you solutions to your problems.
If you have all the questions I asked, she pretty much answered.
Yeah.
All I gotta say is I didn't really realize. I mean, she's pretty smart. She hit my trauma on the head. I was oh, that makes a lot of fucking sense. No wonder I am this way. I miss my dad. Daddy didn't love me.
There were a few times where she was talking and I was just like, oh shit, that's Nicole. I was like, that is textbook, full definition. I was like, that, does she know you? Have you guys talked before?
The audacity of her to use the word clingy. I am not clingy.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was very accurate.
Okay, so let me just point this out though. I want to talk to her so I can tell her explain what our actual issues are and in depth because she doesn't know us, so, and neither did Leo, the other podcast did. So it's a very blanket statement.
Sure.
Okay, so the thing that is irritating the piss out of me is they're oh, Chaz is a man, he needs time to think about things. I get that. But the thing isn't, I don't think giving you time is going to fix our problems. You just don't agree with me.
Yeah, well, because of the way that you phrase what our problem is, that's why they say that you should give me time to process what it is that you think. Because you just say that you're an overthinker and then that, I don't give you the response that you want. And they're both like, well, give them some time to really process.
So you think if I was like, hey, I'm not going to air our dirty laundry and say what our issues are, but take one of our issues. If I was this bothers me and blah, 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 and then you think over it, you're going to feel any differently about it than what you feel now?
A little bit, but I told you that there's already examples of that where it's you'll say that there's something wrong and I'll say, well, that's stupid, I'm not changing. And then the next day I change it.
But those are minor things though.
I'm just giving you an example It does happen that way.
I guess I just
bigger issues, no, but that's also that's not a timing thing. That's an opinion. That's a very different lifestyle thing. But when you phrase it to them, it's not because we don't want to on the podcast talk about all of our dirty laundry. But I think that's just different. I don't think that what they're suggesting will work for what our bigger issues are.
That's what my point is.
But they don't know what the bigger issue is, so what they're saying does work. And what I'm saying is the example of what they're saying working is things that have happened in the past.
Yeah. But I really want their opinion on if the things that I get upset about are stupid. Or if they would be more on your side.
I don't know, but I also didn't say that they were stupid. I just said that I don't agree with them.
Yeah, and so then it's like that was another question I was going to ask her, but I don't have the time.
Let's pay the $47.
No, I'm a poor person. I don't have.
I'll pay the $47.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I was going to like. My question is like, you know, I understand that overthinking. My overthinking is an issue. Like
Sure.
I shouldn't assume the worst all the time. I understand that, but regardless of if I fix that part about myself, I still think the issues, the things that I have, the boundary issues that I have, they're not going to go away because I don't think it's appropriate.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's due to my trauma or I think a lot of girls.
To be fair, you keep harping on our big issue, and the whole thing that happened in this last argument that we had was you say we came to a compromise and now it should be fine because we've actually talked about it and come to a compromise. So
no, I know. I'm not saying I'm mad about it. I'm just saying, like, I was going to ask her, like, where is the line between, like, you are probably, like, you know, I don't know how to explain it. That's why I didn't ask it because it was going to take too long. But, like, where's the line between I feel this way because I have trauma and because I'm crazy, or, like, that's just
who I am?
And it's like a bound, like, where, like, I need to be able to talk to you and, like, explain how I feel and everything like that in a healthier way. But then I also need to respect my boundaries and what I think is okay.
I feel like there's only a handful of things that we don't see eye to eye on, and we're just gonna have to accept that those are things that we just have to, like, constantly work at to get through.
I know.
It's not gonna be a clean, easy break.
I know. And then and then me being the overthinker, I'm like, is this just going to be, like, toxic? Like, you know, like, is this, like, a deal breaker?
Well, no, I don't know that it would be toxic because it's not I don't abuse you. I don't talk down to you. I don't. How dare you? I mean, calling you stupid is one thing, but I don't, you know, whatever.
Verbal abuse is part of my childhood trauma.
Okay.
Jazz.
But my point is, I don't know that it would constitute as toxic because it's literally just one isolated issue, and it's not like it's a constant thing. It happens ever so often.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I just, you know, just in my head about it all the time because I'm a loser.
It's just, you know, the Nicole way.
I'm like, fix me, lady. Just fix me. Like, she's like, you're a control freak. You're clingy. I'm like, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I am. Why?
Now, how do I fix it?
Yeah. Like, really, like, can we do this, like, black and white? Like, just fix me.
Yeah,
Make me better.
I don't think it's that easy.
Yeah.
So
maybe, yeah. And then, you know, that whole, like, abandonment, like, you know, my dad, like, committing suicide, like, I think that is, I've never really thought about it like that, like, because, like, I think,
especially as it, like, having experienced it as a child and your mind not really understanding what happened, but it's still there, and as you get older,
and I think, like, especially with my ex, one of my exes, like, even though I knew it was horrible and it was and this isn't even one ex, this is more than one ex. Like a few guys
it's a pattern.
It's like, even though I knew it was toxic, it's like I chose to, like, pick the few good things about it and focus on those and ignore. And that's one of the questions on this quiz. It's like, do you focus on the sex or the humor or whatever and ignore the rest of the stuff? I'm like, yes, I do that because I'm like, oh, he's not that bad because we do have fun together and we do this. And
you said,
I knew it.
What a loser.
Stop. I knew you were going to say it. But yeah, I will find, like, you know, there's a list of 20 things. I'll find the 3 good things. And I'm like, but there's 3 good things out of 20. So, you know what? I'm not ready to leave him yet. I'm going to stay in this as long as possible.
Yeah.
Because, and then it's also, I think that is something that plays into our relationship is, like, when I said on the podcast last week, it's like, I've dated people that, like, put me up on this pedestal and, like, you don't. It's like, I need it because, like, I'm worried that you're going to leave me. Like, I need you to, like, have me up here so that I can know that you're not going to abandon me like my dad.
Okay.
It's just, you know, I didn't realize how much this affected my life.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that I could be the one to help bring that out of you.
You didn't. Rianna did.
I said to
Rihanna.
help. Rihanna. I said to help bring it out of you. Because if we weren't together, we wouldn't have done this podcast. You wouldn't have talked to her, and that would have never come out.
Okay. Well, thank you.
That's all I was saying. Just, okay.
I deserve credit where credit's due.
That's one, not what I sound like. Two, not what I said.
Pretty spot on. Pretty close.
Pretty not spot on.
I think I'm getting really good at my impressions of you.
Sometimes that one wasn't, though.
I mean, it's pretty bad when I say something. Julian's like, you sound like Chaz. Yeah. I'm like, I know. I'm perfecting it. That's a compliment, you little shit.
I also didn't do my outro on purpose because I was like, I feel like with her, I shouldn't say... Yeah. Our collective journey in unhealthy coping.
She'd be like, wait a minute. I'm not signing off on this.
Yeah.
You know what? And then another thing that I wanted to ask her about is, it's so funny because when, I don't know if you did this, like your dad wasn't, I feel like it's like girls do it with their moms.
Daddy wasn't there.
Yeah. I feel like girls do it with their moms and boys do it with their dads. It's like as you're growing up, like, I'm never going to be like my mom or I'm never going to be like my dad. And now that I'm a parent, I'm so much like my mom.
Really?
I'm a yeller, which but it's like I know this about myself and I don't know how to stop. I hate yelling. That's why I was like, I should look into some CBD and chill the fuck out. Like,
yeah. Children bring that out of you. But it's after it's like, your kids are 10 and 5, so it's 10 years of telling them to do the same thing over and over and them not listening. So it's a lot of frustration. So I can understand why you would want to scream. And that's why your fuse is so short with your children, generally speaking, not you specifically. But like even me.
My fuse is short with my children.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's just like you've had them for 10 years of just telling them, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that. And eventually it just gets fucking old.
You're
like, why can't you just stop?
Yeah, I know. But I wonder if she's got some parenting tips. Me and my sister were at this person's house and they were counselors and like... He was like on the phone, so I was like, I want to talk to him about how do you have this perfect life? Like 2 counselors, like it's just like I don't know. It was
their
just,
communication game's probably like.
I strive to be that parent that has a calendar on my fridge.
Why?
Because it's so like like Sunday night's movie night and little Scotty gets to pick the movie and like I don't know. I want like
who the fuck is Scotty?
That was just a name I came up with.
We're not. If we have a boy, his name's not going to be Scotty. Are you out of your
I'm
damn mind?
not talking about having a baby with you. I'm saying. Want to hear a funny story?
No.
So I was at work today, and one of my friends was like, "You want to know what the popular boy name was for a long time? And it's such a stupid name." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "Jackson." And I was like, "Oh my god, that's Chaz."
I feel triggered. But that was my old kid name. I told you I no longer want it.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it matters.
Not that it matters.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed, guys. Woo, woo, woo.
Oh, yeah.
Plan B.
Okay. Nicole's getting on birth control is what's happening.
I am, guys. I've made the conscious decision that, after our Chicago trip, because...
Yeah.
Don't impregnate me on the Chicago trip.
We'll try my best.
I'm going to go to the guy now and be like, hey, can we just check and make... Before we put this IUD in there, can we just make sure I'm not pregnant?
I think they do.
Okay, good.
I think they have to make sure that you're not pregnant because birth control will fuck that whole thing up.
Yeah. But yeah,
you didn't make the conscious decision. I've been asking you for months to get on birth control.
It's my body. I don't care what you say. I wanted to take my time and make the decision on my own.
I was just going to stop having sex with you.
That's false.
And then I would have forced a decision for you.
That's not true.
That is true.
You couldn't go that long.
You don't know. Oh, I could have gone long enough for you to be like, you know what? Maybe I should just get on birth control.
My body is a temple, and I can do what I want with it.
Your temple is broken, okay?
No,
your temple's got a leak, okay?
Whatever, it wouldn't have worked.
Okay.
I'm joking, it would have. I'm a sex fiend.
I know.
I need it. I want it. I love it. Okay. Speaking of.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got to go. Gotta wrap this up. Enjoy the episode. It's informative. Not as funny, but informative. So, okay, bye. Usually when we have a guest, it's someone who we know personally. But this week we have a special guest. And today we're joined by Riana Milne. Sorry, I was practiced that and then I think I stuck it. Riana is the author of Love Beyond Your Dreams and Live Beyond Your Dreams, and specializes in dealing with childhood trauma and relationship trauma, as well as the host of Lessons in Life and Love podcast. Welcome, Riana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for joining. So, sure. I guess where we want to start off is kind of what led you to kind of pursue this career of talking to people about their traumas and helping people through their relationship and childhood traumas.
Okay. Well, a couple of things. I took the traditional route and got a triple master's in applied clinical and counseling psychology in year 2000 and opened up my private practice, Therapy by the Sea, in southern New Jersey. I'm from Philly. And as I was building my practice, I was working in other capacities. I was hired out as a counselor for schools. It's called a SAC counselor, student assistance counselor, working with kids of crises from emotional trauma, home trauma, identified as ADHD or oppositional defiant. And that was grades kindergarten all the way through college. Then I was working in a medical hospital center, the child and adolescent wing for kids age 5 through 19. And as a drug and alcohol addictions counselor, I worked in a teen rehab center and also with women from the prison system. So I worked with a lot of different populations, ages, men, women, families, kids, and the same top 10 traumas kept coming up that seemed to really be causing these kids to get stuck or angry or defiant or depressed. But it wasn't until I had some love trauma myself. My ex was a wonderful person on the surface, but he kind of had what we call a split personality, a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. To society, to me, to the community, he was this one fabulous person, and then he had a whole secret life. And when this blew up in his face, he said to me, I don't know why I sabotage everything I love. And I said, I don't either, but I'm going to figure it out. So childhood trauma was nothing I heard in my master's program. And that's what led me to the path for my own healing. I had 7 psychotherapy friends. Nobody knew about childhood trauma. It wasn't discussed. The term did not exist when this happened. And this was 2011. So it's pretty recent. And this was what took me into the research that I did that created my book, which is 400 pages, Love Beyond Your Dreams, Break Free of Toxic Relationships to Have the Love You Deserve. And then there was so much information. I got to 400 pages. I said, I've got to stop. And I then created interactive notebooks for my coaching clients, for both singles and for couples, to help heal both childhood and love trauma. And that's how I got into it, because I needed the healing as well. And I was at the point of, I don't know what I don't know. And it's a very frustrating place to be. So the research is what helped me and helps now so many people around the world heal from both childhood and love trauma.
Okay. So you say that in your master's program, they didn't spend a lot of time going over this. Why do you think it is that
zero did not exist?
Why do you think it is that they don't discuss it prior and that now it may be getting more attention than it was previously?
The only possible thing that was close was attachment theory or family systems. Okay, that's what they call it in psychology. And again, this is when I went to school for my master's, was 1997. So they didn't know the impact of childhood trauma. It happened for me because of my personal story. But then there was a study that got a lot of attention called the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Events, by the Kaiser Permanente group out of San Diego, who looked at over 17,000 overweight adults and came up with this ACE inventory. But when I looked at that compared to the childhood trauma checklist that I developed, I said, wow, they are missing so many things. Like they were missing abandonment. They were missing being bullied or not fitting in or feeling different. So there was, they said, oh, well, if your parents did drugs and alcohol, I'm like, well, how about the other 11 addictions that, tear apart families? So there was, to me, a lot that was missing. But the study was valuable because what they really focused on with the health aspect of unhealed, unconscious childhood trauma, that showed the physical disorders of sleeping disorders, eating disorders, poor immune functioning, early disease, early death, cardiovascular disease, irritable bowel, fibromyalgia. So many health reasons when trauma stays stored in the brain and the body cells. So it was a valuable study, but they didn't look at anything correlated to how you feel about in your life, your success level in business, or success in love and parenting relationships. They didn't look at any of the interpersonal things. And that's the area I was coming from.
Gotcha. And that actually leads to another question. So what are, other than the physical things that you went over, what are kind of some of the signs that you may be dealing with some childhood trauma and you're just not aware with that's causing you some issues?
Well, the first thing to understand is what are the top 10 childhood traumas? Because most people say, well, I didn't have trauma in life. I had a few bumps in the road, but my childhood was normal. Until they hear the 10 traumas that kept coming up again and again, and I put the checklist together. So once you hear what the 10 traumas, then I correlate the severity levels from 1 to 10, with 8, 9, and 10 being more severe. And then how they show up is a combination of these traumas and what comes out in your adult life or love relationships or business success.
Gotcha. Okay. And let's say, what are the top 3 of or let's just go through all 10 if you.
Well, I have it right here.
Oh, okay. Nicole's going to bring up the checklist.
I actually took your trauma checklist quiz and you emailed me today, but I was like, I'm just going to wait to talk about it when she's here. But
okay. I remember that coming through. I do look at everybody's test if they take it. Mm-hmm.
And I had quite a few childhood traumas and I was like, oh, okay. But,
Okay.
So either parent had an addiction to anything. So my dad was addicted to drugs and eventually, and that led into another trauma, which is like, it was said something like one of your parents has passed away, which he actually committed suicide because of all of his drug issues.
That would have been considered a no-fault abandonment, which is trauma number 5 under abandonment. And for our listeners, there are a lot of addictions other than drugs and alcohol. You could have known that your parent was having an affair and you held that secret. They could have been addicted to gambling, porn, eating, hoarding, spending, TV watching, gaming, workaholism, and even social media or computer addiction. So any of those addictions can stand in the way of the parent-child bond. And I think that's important that, if they say, well, my parent was an alcoholic, but all they did was work all the time, they have to know that's a form of an addiction as well. It can be.
Let's see. Another one was mental illness occurred in either parent. And it,
trauma 10. Mm-hmm.
Like 2 of the most common is borderline personality disorder or bipolar disorder, which my dad was bipolar.
A lot of people misdiagnose that. So for our listeners, just to give some quick and simple to easy to understand definitions, borderline personality disorder, I believe, is one of the most difficult to navigate. This is all a radical mood. So when they're good, they're great. When they're bad, they're horrid, and you never know what they're going to get. Very often they fly off the handle, fast trigger anger at things that nobody else would get upset over. So that's borderline. And bipolar is manic depressive. So depression can show up as emotionally checking out, exhaustion, or even anger. And a manic phase could be high and happy, but it's usually tied to an addiction like gambling spree, eating binge, spending spree, something like that. So bipolar used to be the term thrown around for years when really it was a borderline personality, just like narcissism is thrown around like crazy today, when usually it's more something like sociopathy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because now that you said that, I feel like my dad was definitely more borderline personality. Yeah. And then my mom ended up remarrying. And I think my stepdad kind of had the same thing. So we just, just kept bringing them in.
Yeah.
So then that means your mom had a lot of trauma. And Nicole, it's definitely true that childhood trauma goes through the generations, at least 3 generations. So if you had it, definitely mom and dad had trauma and their parents had trauma. And recent research even showed that the survivors of the Holocaust, their DNA and gene protocol was different than most because of all the trauma that they survived. And it went through 3 generations of this gene change in their family lineage. So it's really important to know how much trauma can really impact your family.
Well, and I definitely think like with like your parent had an addiction to something, like I ended up marrying somebody who was just like my dad. And I definitely think that was because of my childhood trauma. Like I literally, like my dad passed away when I was 7. And then when I met my ex, like he was basically my dad. And I was like, oh my God, I love him.
Well, this is what happens. The soul and the psyche of the brain likes what is normalized. It likes what it knows. And unfortunately, this is what is chemistry. And most people, especially in the USA, fall in love due to chemistry, this instant attraction, passion, blah, blah, blah. It's one of the worst ways to fall in love. And it usually lends to toxic relationships. So this is, though, how we were socialized, right? We grew up with the fairy tales and the romance movies of, Sleeping Beauty. The handsome prince comes, he's attractive, he kisses you, and you're then happily ever after. Well, this is how we were told to fall in love, which couldn't be, farthest from the truth. So this is what a lot of people do. It's like marrying an alcoholic husband. He would say, oh my God, my father's alcoholic. I never would have chosen that. And that's because your unconscious chose it. Yeah. So most people date unconsciously. And what I teach is how to date consciously with full awareness. You are going for the substance of the cake, not the icing on the cake. Because without the substance, you've just got icing all over the place. So
if you do find yourself in kind of that cycle of this unconscious dating, how do you kind of break that and get into making more conscious decisions about making sure you're dating the right people?
It takes about 6 months to break the unconscious patterns, what we call the norms. And these originally come from childhood coping and survival mechanisms. The child is not in their mature mind. So, you had asked before, what are some of the things that show up? Well, jealousy and control can show up from trauma number 7, which is the one that most people identify with, which is personal trauma. This is if you remember feeling different, if you were bullied, you didn't fit in. This could have been the heavy and overweight child, the skinny and gawky kid that was called the nerd, the only African-American student in an all-white school, the young person, the teen trying to come out as gay or lesbian, or they look different than what society says a girl should look like. So many people can relate to trauma number 7. And this is, where jealousy and control can come from. It also could come from trauma number 2, which is our verbal messages that we hear. Those two in combination cause a lot of problems. Verbal abuse could be watching your parents yelling and screaming at each other, them yelling at you, never hearing the words, I love you, or verbal put downs or slights like, no, I'm not sending you to college. You'll just flunk out, no confidence in you, no verbal accolades. You don't hear, great job, kiddo, I'm proud of you. And the baby boomer generation, of which I'm from, like my mother didn't say the words, I love you to us 5 kids. I finally taught her after I had a child at the age of 24 to say, Mom, these words are important to tell your kids. Why don't you say to your kids that I love you? She goes, well, these aren't words I heard. They were never told to me. We grew up in the Great Depression. At that time, it was all about survival and hard work. So you can see the cultural norms going through the generations until somebody learns, no, this is not the way to raise, successful, happy kids. So, once you learn the do's and the don'ts of emotional health, then you can stop the trauma bonds going into your generation, into your kids. But I do, like I said, it's a 6-month education with a 150-page workbook, all based on my research. And the worksheets are interactive. So like the childhood trauma checklist, once you answer them, I would discuss that with the client or with a discovery session. And there's actually 5 total assessments for that 1-hour session. And we get to the root of the issue and why things are showing up for you like they are. Like I said, I have to assess what they are, what you have. I have to get some more family history, and I have to know the severity levels of the traumas that showed up for you. With Nicole having the abandonment issues of her father, It's kind of a situation of fault and no fault abandonment. Usually when a parent dies early, it's a no fault abandonment if they're sick or they went off to war and they died there. But suicide is a choice. So that could be considered a fault abandonment. Either way, with abandonment issues, what we're talking about, it could lead to being clingy in relationship, having anxiety when your partner is gone, a lot of codependency, or the toxic cycle of relationships, which we call RRS, repetitive relationship syndrome.
That is Nicole summed up into one.
And it's funny because like when I think about my past and my trauma, I'm like, no, like it doesn't affect me. Like, I don't care and whatever, but everything like clingy, anxiety when I'm not with him, I'm like, oh my God, that's me. Like,
and if he upsets you, you might seek attention outside by texting an old guy friend or a Facebook friend.
no.
And you might be in this cycle
Yeah.
of toxic, repetitive relationships. What the research shows, it's 7 times that you break up, go back together, break up, go back together. So what is happening? Your conscious mind says, this guy's no good for me. Consciously, you know that. But unconsciously, the desire to have love from that man that you unfortunately missed from your father, right, is so strong. The unconscious is very strong to change, but we can do it. It just takes time. So that's why you would keep going back to the toxic partner over and over again, because the psyche, the soul desires and craves that love so much. And by the way, listeners, I have not talked to Nicole before this minute. So you can see these patterns are very much in tune just due to the research. It's fascinating how it comes up.
Yeah, you got me there.
So you did bring up a little bit ago about jealousy in relationships. And I feel like sometimes people say that some amount of jealousy is healthy and good. And I just kind of want to I want to see what your view on jealousy in a relationship is. Like, is there a such thing as a certain amount of good jealousy?
No, I think it's really unnecessary. When you have really good self-esteem, but again, from trauma 2, verbal messages that you may not have gotten, or 7, feeling different, not pretty enough, handsome enough, you didn't fit in. This is usually when jealousy and control will show up. Control is also showing up, and Nicole, this might be for you too, in perfectionism, because when you had a very chaotic childhood, due to what you endured, you would have this need for perfectionism or things in place. You have this need. Now in business, this can work out very well. And I have a lot of people successful in business, but they struggle in love. So that is because you just crave that order that you didn't get as a child. Yeah, but perfectionism towards your partner can nitpick your partner and really tear you guys apart. So,
oh my God! Now you're speaking to Chaz.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that's where the jealousy and control comes from.
I don't know that I can pinpoint anything in my childhood where I felt like it was chaotic and not where like I feel like I need to be more organized. But again, I feel like that's a job for a therapist, not a job for Chaz.
Well, I am a therapist. What else do you have going on? There is also family and community trauma. So that is trauma number 9. I'll go into that. Right now, everyone is experiencing community trauma. It is the COVID pandemic. Everyone is fear-based, worried about death. Are they going to get sick? Think about what our kids are suffering with. They can't go to school. They can't play with their friends. They're afraid for mom and dad to go off to work. You are going to see the impact of this in the next 8 to 10 years when they become adults. Community traumas also are mass shootings, our school shootings, are Mother Nature events, floods, fires, hurricanes, things like this. Now, family trauma can be impacted by community trauma. So if someone loses their job in COVID, now they can't hold on to their home because of their mortgages due, or they can't pay their heat bills. They don't have money for food. They're in food lines. And even pre-COVID, if you grew up in a dangerous neighborhood, you didn't feel safe, or there was always messages around lack. We don't have money for this, so there's not enough money for that. This could lead to impulse buying. Well, I want that sports car, and they go and buy it without telling the wife. Or, yes, I want those $300 sneakers because I deserve them. Whatever the case is, it could be leading towards impulse purchases and things that you feel you deserve because you didn't have them as a kid. Or just the opposite in business. You get so far, then you stop. And you then say, well, I don't know. I don't want to invest, let's say, in that coach, that business coach, because it's $10,000. Well, but part of you knows, well, if I do, I can make it. I can make my dreams. And the other part that's holding you back is the lack messages, that's a lot of money, that's too much, that you're not worthy to spend that on yourself. So there's all different ways that this can show up depending on what your traumas were.
Now, talking about the current pandemic and how that's affecting people, Nicole and I actually started dating right at the beginning of COVID.
Okay.
And sometimes we do wonder if it wasn't for the pandemic, how much time we would have actually spent together. Now, we were friends prior to that.
That's good. So you have a foundation in friendship, which is most important for success in a relationship.
But then we started hanging out because, we were just always around each other and we couldn't go anywhere else. And then our relationship kind of formed out of that. And now we just sometimes wonder, would we have started dating if it wasn't for the pandemic?
Or were we
I don't know you guys well enough, and I don't know your childhood histories well enough because I haven't gone into them all. That's fine. Why question it? But the important thing is a relationship starts in the foundation of friendship. And in today's world in general, people want to jump to sexual intimacy by the third date, the second date. It's ridiculous. You barely know somebody. And this is where a lot of people are making huge mistakes and entering into traumatic relationships. So again, it's taking the time. The research shows the first 3 months are very romantic, and it looks like it's a perfect partner when you're with someone that could be traumatic. And months 4 to 9 are when things start getting serious. It could be living together, saying you're exclusive, getting engaged, getting married, or having a child. When any of those major developments happen, this is often where the emotional triggering starts, and the moods could happen, or you'll see more drinking to cope, or smoking dope or whatever to cope with the anxiety of the new relationship.
Yeah, I will say that usually I'd say in the last, year or two, probably longer than that, that when I start dating someone, usually around that 3-month mark, I'm just not interested anymore. But with Nicole, that was not the case.
Okay, good. So now that you are a couple, when I work with couples, I always have to look at partner A and partner B, and the third entity is the relationship. So what is the childhood trauma piece for partner A, and what are the severity levels? And B, and what are the severity levels? And then what are the issues that are showing up for you guys? What are the emotional triggers? What are the reoccurring issues that come up? And once I know what your traumas are, I educate both of you on the others and how you can have more empathy and concern and care for each other's traumas. And you learn not to take things so personally, number one. You learn to own the feeling when you're being triggered. So let's say the man goes off to work, he gets yelled at by his boss who says, "Why do you keep screwing up?" And that was a message his father kept saying, "You're just a screw up," to the boy, the young boy. So as a man, he comes home normally upset, pissed off, and takes it off, out on his wife and his kids, or is just miserable that night. And he won't talk about it because he's embarrassed. So instead, in that scenario, he would know that he was triggered due to the same similar verbal messages from the father. Walk into the house and say, "Babe, I had a rough day at work. My boss said something, and man, it triggered me right back to my dad and how he used to yell at me. So I just need like an hour to de-escalate. If I'm a little quiet tonight, I just want you to know it's not you, hun." Whole different scenario. He's owning it. He knows where it comes from. He knows what to do to cope and get his mindset going. into what we call reparenting mode, fixing the negative message, which is through capping and correcting, going from the dark fear-based thought, which we call the dark side, the reactive side, into the light, which is the proactive side, and the conscious side, or the educated side. So most people have 8 out of 10 thoughts are negative and reactive. We train people's minds to be the other way. 8 out of 10, all positive, not fear-based. If there's a problem, we look at it totally different. And it really helps, you know, I mean, the relationships really, really thrive after that. Talk about more trust and safety and love and companionship, because now you really get each other. And the issues rarely come up at that point.
Yeah, so
that program's called Relationship Rescue.
Gotcha. I guess that kind of all starts with self-awareness, to realize that there are things that you're doing that may be affecting your partner in a way that you don't want to.
Yeah. And a lot of them, like I said, are unconscious or considered norms, right?
Yeah.
I had a couple in my office. The man was from the Midwest, a farming town, really laid back, chill kind of guy. And the woman was a South Philly Italian woman. And I have a ton of South Philly Italian friends, and I know their personality type. They're really hyper, and they talk real dramatic, and it almost sounds like they're yelling, right? But that's just their norm. That's how she was raised. So he says, well, I'm in here because she yells at me all the time. And she looks at him and says, what do you mean I yell at you? I never yell at you.
As she's yelling at him.
As she's yelling at him. And I looked at her real calmly and said, you don't hear it, do you? Because she really didn't know. It was so unconscious and normal for her that she thought everybody talked like this. So then I had to have her work on what we call vocal habits, pace, pitch, tone, choice of words, you know, and her pace was so fast that it sounds aggressive. Her volume was so loud that it did sound like she was yelling at him all the time. So we break all these little minute habits, and everyone is a different puzzle, you know, and he couldn't talk about his feelings. Well, they didn't do that back then. There was always work from morning to night on the farm. Nobody had times for problems. You just fix them as you go. And, you know, he was taught, you know, you don't whine and complain as a man. So he would just taught, you don't talk about your feelings. And then she would get more aggressive. Why don't you tell me what's going on? And he just shut down. That was his norm, you know. So you see, this is what I have to get to the bottom of. And then I re-educate for you guys to communicate better. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. I think that is a pretty common thing. Probably not as much in the younger generations, but definitely, at least in my generation, of, you know, if you're a man, you don't talk about your feelings. If you're a black man, you definitely don't talk about your feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's really important to do that. My son-in-law is African-American, Preston Smiles. You may have heard of him. He's a man's coach globally, and he does very well. And he is teaching this in his coaching programs, that it's important that you're in touch with your feelings, that you know where you're triggered. To have a satisfactory relationship, you have to share your feelings as they occur and not stuff them, which we call passive aggressive. Because if you don't talk about them, then it's bound to come out in some other way, right? So...
And that's where I think Chaz and I have a lot of issues, because I'm overly talking about my feelings.
Yeah.
And that's like when we do get in arguments, it's like, I can't end the argument until I feel like we have like exhausted every single feeling that we have. Like if he just like shuts down, doesn't want to talk about it anymore, I can't handle it. I'm like, we need to talk until we fix this.
Your control need, Nicole.
Yeah.
To control the situation.
Yeah.
And that's a huge need in you, because you did not have that man that was emotionally healthy growing up around you, not father one or father two. And you want this settled in a loving way, because your whole life as a child, it was never settled. There was yelling, there was acting out, you know, I'm sure between your father and mother. This is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So you never saw that satisfaction of now it's settled and we're calm. So this is a huge need of control. But the more you push your guy, you're going to push him away because it's just too uncomfortable. There is a way to do this, again, with time and coaching, and that's what I do. And the difference between coaching and therapy, just for the listeners to know, therapy you often see in the stereotypical TV shows and movies where they say, well, how do you feel about that? Mm-hmm. I always hated that method. I figure if someone's coming to me as a therapist, they want some answers. So that's what we call solution focused. And I was always motivational, inspirational, and spiritually grounded. So coaching does come from education. It comes from research. It presents a lot of different solutions. We put the solutions out there and we start action, so the action and the solutions is what gets amazing results. And all the coaching I do over the internet years ago, only before COVID, you couldn't do therapy online, which was totally ridiculous. So 2009 and 10, I got certified and licensed as a coach under Relationship Coaching Institute and started building my materials to be an online coach and started that like in 2016. So, so I've been coaching globally, worldwide in this topic since then. So it's very solution focused. And like I said, reading the books, Live and Love Beyond Your Dreams, and doing the worksheets, because you learn from the worksheets, right, Nicole? Even looking at the worksheets, it's educational. That's one sheet out of 150. And it's like, wow, yeah, I do have this. Okay, so now I know that some of these things must be impacting the way that we relate.
So do you believe that with counseling and stuff like that, that everybody has the opportunity to change, or do you just think some people are just stuck in their ways?
With coaching, yes.
You think everybody,
a good coach that knows what they're doing. There's a lot of coaches that say, I want to be a coach, but they don't have the mental health training. And I'm a certified clinical trauma professional. So when you're talking trauma work, you really need to have the studies behind you, the research, really know what you're doing, because you're working with the psychology of someone. So yes, I do believe people can change. They do say the sociopath and psychopath cannot change. I've had a couple sociopaths that have changed. I have not worked with a psychopath, and I'll explain some of the differences. And I've had plenty of narcissists. They're a dime a dozen. So the sociopath and the psychopath are people that use another for pleasure, profit, or lifestyle advancement. However, the psychopath has more of a criminal mind, and they're very brilliant in the way that they will bring people down or use them. For example, a Bernie Madoff, right? He had a full criminal plan going on for years and got tons of money and hurt a lot of people, unfortunately. So that's a criminal mind. And the psychopath is the one that has the ability to kill with no remorse. Okay, so the sociopath is close to that, but the psychopath is worse. And both of them are also malignant narcissists. But there are 10 types of narcissists out there. So when a lot of people come to me, oh, my boyfriend's a narcissist, and then they explain, I said, no, your boyfriend's a sociopath. So when I was doing the research in 2011, Martha Stout's book, The Sociopath Next Door, she quoted 1 in 25 were sociopathic. The recent research, now that I looked about 8 months ago, they were saying 6 to 7 out of 25 are sociopathic. So it does tend to be getting worse. So for our singles out there, you really need to know what to look for. Do not fall in love from chemistry. You've got to know the do's and the don'ts and the whys. You either choose to continue to date someone or not date someone. And you should know that within date 1 or 2. So there's much to learn that unfortunately our schools are not preparing our young people on emotionally healthy love and what you should do and what you should be looking for.
Now, are there sociopathic traits that evolve, or is it if you just kind of exhibit certain sociopathic traits, maybe that's all that it'll ever be? Or is it common, if you start down that path, you will ultimately get to the worst version of a sociopath?
Well, again, the sociopath has had 9 to 10 traumas with a level of 9 or 10. So this poor child, and this is what led to my healing and spiritual forgiveness of my ex, he was a 9-9. and had the alcoholic father who was abusive and beat him almost every day, the docile mom that would not step in and save him. Thus, he hated his mom. I mean, just the combination was so intense. And he craved love, so part of him was satisfied by that, but it was never enough. These are people that often equate sex with love, and there's never enough sex to satisfy them. They want it constantly all the time because sex equals love. And if you say no, they get upset. They have a hissy fit. They shut down for 2 days because in that way there's a rejection. So there's definitely a mother-son trauma bond there if that keeps showing up.
Yep, that we're back onto Nicole.
I'm not a sociopath.
I mean,
a sociopath will never apologize. They have no remorse over hurting someone.
Okay,
that's
not you. No.
Yeah, and it's over time, right? Trauma over time, over and over and over, day in, day out of this poor child experiencing this toxic household. And the first persons you're supposed to love and trust are your parents. So if you have no trust or safety there in general, you have no trust or safety for other adults or society or your partners.
Now, would you say someone who exhibits those traits of being a sociopath where it's kind of sex driven, do those people often become sex addicts?
Yes.
Interesting.
Very tied to addiction in many ways. I've had people very addicted to porn that have lost everything, their jobs, their wives, or kids. And there's never enough. It's that, like any addiction, right? The addiction will always come first before the partner, before the family, before the job. So, and that's rampant because it's all over the place. It's so easy to get.
Yeah, well, yeah, especially these days. I mean, you can have it on your phone in seconds.
That's right.
And there's a something for everyone. there's no end.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. So you had another quiz on here, and it was the red flag checklist for relationships.
Good. I'm glad you did that one. How did you guys do?
So, well, we didn't, we had to wait for you for our results, but
okay.
How many red flag, like, do you think, like, if there's like one red flag, you're like how many is like, all right, maybe this isn't very compatible? Like, how many would you let us have?
Well, at the bottom there is the tally, right? You can tally it up and it says, what's acceptable for you. However, let's say there's not many, but there's one, but with a severity level of a 10.
Yeah, you're
right?
a deal breaker.
So, but normally if there's one, there's several.
Yeah.
There's usually not just one.
I just like some of these questions, like, like, would you want to spend the rest of your life with this person exactly as they are? It's like, I mean, if, I would marry him if he asked me to, but like, there's some things he can change. Like, he's not perfect. Okay. Like,
well, again, no one's going to be the 100% perfect partner, and you have to come with that acceptance as well. Our people aim for 90 to 92%. But there's going to be differences, and you have to learn to respect each other's differences. I mean, I've seen so many couples fighting over the presidential election. It's like, seriously, let them vote for whoever they friggin' want to vote for.
Yeah.
You don't have to convince your partner to be you. Right.
That's happened a lot with even friendships, that people are no longer friends because of political beliefs, which is crazy.
And why is that need for control so big? So, you have to really look at what you're doing, what you're saying to another person, the kind of manipulation you're trying to exert over someone, and ask why. What's the need for that? So, with couples, and I say it's perfectly fine to say, hun, we just don't agree on this one, and that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine, and you just stop the discussion.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that one's the part that I'm most concerned about is part 3, Nicole. Go down to part 3, which are the danger signs.
I'm not seeing that.
If you scroll down the list.
Nicole's not great with technology.
I'm not. I'm really not.
There's part 1, part 2, and part 3.
Hold on. Maybe I'm on the wrong quiz.
No, that's the right quiz, the red flag checklist. Mm-hmm.
I'm just seeing a bunch of questions.
Well, you'll see jealous and controlling. You'll see have to have things their way, moody, talk only about themselves. I mean, you'll see it's probably like questions 15 through 36.
Okay, because like I'm seeing all the questions. It's just not broken into categories. That's where I'm getting confused. But I know what you're talking about. Yeah, like
towards the bottom then.
Like talks too much, especially about self, monopolizes the conversation, stuff like that.
Yeah. But there's others like, still pining over someone else. They're still calling and texting their ex.
Yeah.
No, it's not appropriate. If you're with a partner, you say goodbye and good luck to your ex, and they shouldn't be in your life unless you share children.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're both on the same page about that. A lot of these questions, like I think we did okay, but there was just some where I was like, oh, I don't know.
Is there another one you want to throw my way?
I don't know. I guess the one, it was like, you want your kids to be exactly like them. Like, I don't even want my kids to be like me. So you know what I mean? Like, I want my kids to be, I mean, again, that's up at the top. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Okay.
But so if you have a partner who's an alcoholic or a rager, angry, yelling, these are red flags that you don't want to put up with. Or you say, look, we need help. I don't like how you communicate. You're yelling and you're screaming at me all the time. I'm telling you now, I won't be tolerating this. So either we get help now because we have kids we share, or I'm going to have to move forward.
I think that's been a issue, not so much in our relationship, but in relationships in the past, is that like if I'm upset, I don't get angry, I don't scream, I'm almost too calm, where it's like unnerving and it just makes it worse.
Well, no, that's actually good for you to have that. And Nicole, her normal was hearing a lot of yelling.
But yeah,
I don't yell at you, though.
No, it doesn't happen so much between me and Nicole, but it has happened in the past relationships.
I think what Chaz, when he gets quiet and like kind of pulls away from it, I just feel like he's shutting down. Not, you know what I mean? That's what I get from it. It's like you just aren't trying to fix it.
Here's something you need to know about the brain. Men and women process differently. Women are multitaskers. Men think step by step by step. So when they don't voice what's going on, they often really don't know why they are upset. That's for real. So you stop and don't push him, and you give them the time to think about it, form their ideas, think about, should I really be upset about this, or why is this upsetting me? And then ask them to come to talk to you tomorrow about it. But don't keep pushing for that solution, and also, if there was a childhood dynamic where, they were forced to talk about their feelings, or if they try, they get punished, they're emotionally triggered then. Cortisol goes up, which is anxiety or fight or flight. And when cortisol's up, memory and learning and focus is down. So if they're nervous, thinking, oh my God, she's mad at me, she wants me to talk about it, I don't really get why I'm upset. I just know I'm not feeling very happy right now. They might be too agitated to really think clearly. So to go after them to get the solution is like a really bad move.
Yeah.
It's like, hon, okay, you want some time to think about it? Can we talk about this tomorrow when we both have had, time to think on it? That's what you want to do. Let them calm down. And this is so rampant in the schools. I was seeing kids identified ADHD all the time, and they were going through trauma. Like when I was in the elementary school, they had moms and dads in Afghanistan, Iraq. These kids were just like emotionally blank. They couldn't learn. They're worried, like, is my mom going to get killed over there?
Yeah, they had bigger problems in the school education at that point. They were very concerned with other things.
That's right. And the sad thing is, counselors like me, the SAC counselors, are the first to be laid off with a budget cut, but not a football coach. Seriously, then they wonder why there's school shootings. I mean, we should have a SAC in every school for emotional and mental health support for our kids that are going through so much. and people that really know what they're doing to help kids coming from traumatic situations. So they're identified as ADHD, but it's trauma response. They're nervous about their family every day, or let's say mom didn't come home. I was in schools outside of Atlantic City. I was in schools outside of New York, Hackensack High School. I was working with the kids that were the Crips and the Bloods. Okay, so I had some tough kids. And, if they're coming from a home where their mom didn't come home last night because she's doing drugs on the streets of Atlantic City, do you think they're ready to learn math facts at that point? No, it's like, where's my mom? Is she dead on the streets? Here I am at school, because if I didn't go to school, I'd get beat, but where's my mom? That's what they're thinking about. So it's up to me. I mean, this is when in the schools, I'm doing meditation for the kids. I'm doing music therapy. I'm doing behavior modification charts. I'm teaching the teachers how to reach the emotionally upset child and what are the signs of that. So, I mean, there's just so much I know the teachers are already overwhelmed. I totally respect all the work that they do. But if they had this education, it could help them to reach students on the front line. And if they could refer them to their counselors, like my teachers did, then we can get to the bottom of it quickly. And that stopped all the bullying in the school, the anger, the acting out. And we ended up having a great school environment. But this is what's missing in our education system. So this is really true, Nicole. Like, give Chaz the space he needs just to formulate his feelings. And then when he feels safe, and Chaz, that might be something from your childhood, you didn't feel safe to voice your opinions. Like you said, it was part of your cultural norms that you don't talk about your feelings where you were growing up. Give him that time and space, Nicole, to pull that together for you.
Okay. So here's a question. So like one of my biggest issues is I'm an overthinker. I overthink everything. Like if it's just, I can't help myself. And that's our biggest issue is you
can help yourself, number one, which is a good thing. Like you have to get the trauma response system out of your brain and body. You have ongoing anxiety. Every client that comes to me has ongoing anxiety from unhealed childhood trauma. It is one of the top signs that I know that your trauma is still going on. That anxiety, have to do this, have to do that. The perfectionism. I want things this way. I want things that way. I got to control this. That ongoing anxiety is showing you that your trauma is still triggering in your unconscious mind all the time. That overanalyzation, always trying to figure things out. Like my people, they meditate every day, 15 minutes a day. There's one that I teach called Divine Spiritual Meditation. And in science and quantum physics, it shows meditation eases anxiety, depression, the cortisol level, the fight or flight anxiety levels, and blood pressure, and then increases dopamine and serotonin levels of the brain, which are your happy, feel-good chemicals. So really important that that's one thing all my clients do. Yeah. I also do vitamin therapy for them. There's certain vitamins that, can help certain mental situations, stress situations. So I look at the whole picture holistically: mind, body, spirit, food, organics, stress in their life, everything. I have to look at everything to calm that response that's going on, like for you.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of things out of this to chew on over the next couple of days and kind of try to work some things in our relationship. I don't think we're in a bad place, but there's definitely some things we can do that would make us both happier. So we're getting close to time, so I will leave with just this last thing. Now that we're getting COVID vaccinations, they're pushing those out to people. They're become more common for your everyday person. So I feel like we'll start to get back to a normal life here in the next year or so. So with that in mind, what would you say are some things for people to really consider, like to know that they're working towards a healthy relationship when they get back into the dating scene? Because it's going to be coming from everyone kind of being not really communicating with other people for almost a year now.
Well, really, the dating scene has not stopped where I am in Florida.
Oh,
People are still dating. And there's two different views on the gene protocol, which they're calling vaccines, which are not vaccines. The only one that's a vaccine is the Johnson & Johnson one.
Right.
So, and I happen to be anti-vaccine. I'm finding that, a lot of my clients are saying the first questions we get are, did you get the vaccine? That's the first question.
Yeah.
But, there's vitamin therapies. There are prescriptions you can get already that, if you're exposed to COVID, that could be really helpful. You do want to seek out education on the holistic, all natural approaches to helping you with COVID, listeners. That's really important. Anyway, dating is still existing. App dating online will always be happening. There's a skill, an art, and the science and a psychology to dating well, no matter what, whether there's COVID or not COVID. And if you're doing a lot of texting and building what I call a fake relationship, that can be really dangerous. I would rather you see somebody out live, have one or two text conversations, a phone conversation, and then meet them. Because the phony relationships happen over text, and then you're telling someone you really don't know a lot of your personal business. And that can be very dangerous. There could be a psychopath, a sociopath on that app with this handsome looking picture, and it's really somebody totally different.
Yeah, that is true. You don't know who's on the other side of that phone.
That's right. Don't date outside of your area. Don't talk to people out of state. Make sure they're right, within 30 minutes of your hometown, and meet them. Get their last name before you meet them. Look them up online. If they say they have a business, they should be in LinkedIn or Facebook. Do they have a presence? Find out who they are. It's like, this was all good dating protocol before COVID. So I would just say, continue to be extremely careful. Protect yourself. Don't let people pick you up at your house. You don't know these people. Meet them out. If you are feeling like you're getting close, do a background check on someone. Make sure you really know who's in front of you. I've had many clients when they come to me, it's like they thought they knew someone, then they look them up online and there's 50 things on their rap sheet. So, you don't get quickly involved with anyone, especially intimately. If you think you're going to go on to date 3 and 4, then check them out. And if there's a clean slate, there's no, arrest records or anything else that is concerning you, then keep moving forward slowly.
Okay, I just have one more question. This is like a serious question. How long, like time frame, or how many dates do you think it should be before you sleep together? What do you think would be a decent amount of time before you sleep with someone?
There's something called the 90-day rule.
Oh.
And the reason they do that is because, and every listener should be watching or should watch the Dirty John series, which was
God, I loved that series.
Yeah, and it's a true story of a socio and psychopath that courted this woman, was the ideal guy, swept into her life, asked her to marry early. I love you, love bombed her to death. He was a classic sociopath. And when it's too quick, too fast, and you're too intimate, too fast, you're setting yourself up for heartache. You got to read my book, Love Beyond Your Dreams. It tells you everything to do and not to do. The friendship should be built first. Anyone moving too fast, or if they want you to sleep with them by date 3, and you say, look, I'm not your girl. And if they say, well, that's fine, I really like you, I'll wait as long as you want me to, that's the right answer. If they get huffy and stop talking to you, great. You already know up front he wasn't your guy and you didn't waste your time and get involved. Done. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Riana. Is there anything you'd like to, how people get a hold of you? You want to plug your website, that whole thing?
Yeah. I have a lot of great free resources. One are the free love tests that Nicole's been talking about. You just go to my website, rianamilne.com, go under quizzes. You'll find the 4 of them there. On the homepage is my ebook about childhood trauma. It's 32 pages. You'll get a lot more information and the trauma checklist in there. Under books, you get the first 60 pages of Live and Love Beyond Your Dreams. My podcast, Lessons in Life and Love, is on every podcast app. as well as there's about 240 educational free videos and audios on my YouTube channel. So help yourself to the resources. And if you want to meet with me for that deep dive, 1 hour life and love transformation discovery session, it's only $47 with 5 assessments. I usually charge $500 for that. So that's a real bargain. You can find that right on the homepage as well. And we'll get to the issues, the bottom line of what's going on for you and why, and start your healing journey. And I just want to encourage you guys, like, just don't wait. You know, if you're unhappy and your partner won't go to coaching, you start, because it will help change the dynamic. And if you're single and in these repetitive toxic relationships, you don't want to end up in another one. So get the help that you need so you can date, you know, consciously and safely.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We learned a lot here today.
Yeah, we did. We have so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Good. That's great. See how much you can learn in 1 hour?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have to
That's
invest
a
in that
coaching
$47.
You got a lot more than 47, girl. Yeah, this is a coaching model. It's fast education. It's based on research. You're going to learn a lot. And that's what my clients say. Every time they meet with me, they learn a ton. And that's why the transformation happens so quickly.
Awesome. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you. Have a great night.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.
The Trauma Bond Podcast with Chaz
And Nicole.